Good morning, everybody. So nice to see you all here. Welcome to another Wednesday morning edition of Experimental Weaving Lecture Series. Of course, brought to you by the University of Colorado Boulder and a number of other partners, which Laura will talk about in just a minute. My name is Stephen Frost, and we're really excited to have Lucy Smyth with us here this morning. This afternoon, where Lucy is. It's going to be a great talk. As you're jumping in, can you all please just say where you're from in the chat and just let us know where you're coming from and say hi. As we're moving along with this lecture this morning, thanks all. It's so nice to see all of your messages. As we're moving along this morning, I also want to just let you all know we will have a question and answer session at the end of this talk. If you have a question, anytime, anything that comes up in your mind, just drop it in the chat. And what I will do is I will kind of moderate these. I might call on you to give your question, or I might just moderate them and pass them on to Lucy in the end. So once again, as you're coming in this morning, just say hi, drop a wave, drop a location into the chat so we all know where you're coming from. Of course, Laura and I are at the University of Colorado Boulder, and we are so happy to have you all joining us. I'm adding a few more people from our guest room over there, also known as the waiting room. Awesome. So good to see all these great faces. Thank you, everybody. Ontario. Oh my gosh. Northern Ireland. We got everybody. Italy. Oh my gosh. Everybody's here. This is great. Okay, can we all just start our own school? Can we have an international weaving school, please? Yes. We'll put it on a boat and then we can fund it with gambling, I guess, or something. It's like, yeah, great idea, Stephen. Write the grant. All right, my ramblings are over. Laura, I'm going to pass the floor over to you as you swallow your water and we can get started. Lucy, welcome.
Thank you so much. I like our riverboat gambling. Also, weaving on boats would be a fun, interesting challenge. That could be great. And then we could be one of these like nationless places. And, that's very hip, I guess. Anyway, running on that. Good morning, everyone online. Good morning, everyone in class. So just to remind the audience, so we're running this experimental weaving lecture series. It's kind of an offshoot of the experimental weaving residency, which has been running for the past few years, and we're currently working on the next call. So that will expect an announcement about that somewhat soon. And these talks are also hosted in a class I teach here at CU Boulder called Experimental Textiles. So we're really getting everything we can out of the word experimental, I suppose, which to us has been kind of a catch-all for just trying different things. And part of what we like to do with the series is bring in different people that animate different elements of that definition of experimentation. I'm really excited to welcome Lucy Smyth today, who's joining us from Northern Ireland. I should know how to say that. Lucy's an amazing weaver who, there's a few times when we have our like panels in the weaving residency where everyone just kind of goes silent. And that definitely happened with Lucy's portfolio because she has this uncanny way of making weaves pop out in 3 dimensions. And I was looking at her portfolio again this morning and saying I kind of adjusted the last half of the class inspired by it to just really think about the textures we can do with weaving. So instead of color patterning or solely structure, all the different ways we can play with the kind of somatic elements of weaving that I think, Lucy, you illustrate so beautifully. Like you don't just make a lattice, you make a lattice that's like pops and it's crisp and it's polished and it's so beautiful. And so I'm really excited to hear more about your practice today and excited to share it with this audience. And so just let's all give a warm welcome to Lucy. I'll do a quick camera flip so you can say hi to the class. It's humans in a physical space.
Thank you very much. Very lovely intro. So I'm just gonna share my screen. Right. Is that brilliant? Thank you. Great. So hopefully you can all see the front cover. Thank you, Laura, for a lovely intro. And thank you to both Laura and Stephen for inviting me to be part of this amazing and inspirational lecture series. I've loved it, listening to all the other lectures and just kind of hearing about other people's practice and how they go about creating kind of more kind of experimental work. So as Laura mentioned, I'm a lecturer here in Belfast, and I'm a lecturer at Belfast School of Art, which is part of Ulster University, and I specialise in woven and printed textiles. I mostly work with undergraduates, helping them establish their textile art and textile design practice. My weaving practice kind of spans from fabric, thinking more about colour, texture and pattern, to more experimental work that it kind of explores space, volume and movement. And the relationship kind of between 2D and 3D is kind of very key to my work as well. But those are kind of the recurring themes really throughout my work that I kind of keep kind of revisiting and coming back to. I started getting interested in screen printing in combination with the woven fabrics that I was creating, the different fibre contents that I was building. And I was looking at using kind of different screen printing processes to either shrink areas, burn out areas, different things like that. So I kind of initially kind of got into print that way. And then discovered that that's effectively a grid too. So I was at home as soon as I found out the repeating structure and the kind of underlying kind of framework within that. I kind of use thinking tools throughout my practice, such as paper folding, fabric manipulation and sketching. I don't generally kind of draw before, I draw during and after to help me kind of understand the kind of structures within that. And I really kind of find the paper folding, the fabric manipulation are really about helping me think out structures, understand the character and behaviour of the materials that I'm working with. For me, kind of experimentation is all about learning. And as a creative being and an educator, that's kind of central to my ethos. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to discuss some kind of more experimental work that I've created, and kind of some pieces, some elements have been resolved into final pieces. A lot are really just still in kind of sample form, which I kind of really love, because I see that more kind of as a question, and I kind of love the ambiguity of that, and kind of the kind of dialogue between kind of thinking about how other people see the potential of it, and kind of the positioning of it. So I'm kind of really interested to kind of see kind of other people's takes on what the kind of structures and the kind of fabrics can be. So always kind of a point of interest. So I'm not sure if you can kind of see that kind of text just running kind of along the top there. So I've kind of pulled together kind of key kind of elements that I think kind of really kind of illustrates the kind of breadth of experimentation, not just of kind of the material, but also kind of the process itself. And as well as kind of my day job as an educator, I would have done quite a lot of costume work, kind of working on kind of productions such as Game of Thrones and a couple of theatre productions, kind of more kind of ballets, different things like that. Now it's that obviously kind of the work for Game of Thrones is owned by HBO, so they own it. I can't show it. That's fair enough. But why I've kind of wanted to include it is because this kind of body of work, even though aesthetically is very different to what I would class as kind of my normal work, if there is such a thing, but actually kind of really, I kind of found that I kind of was working to the same kind of format or kind of formula within that. And really for me, kind of when you kind of start kind of thinking about three-dimensional creating kind of three-dimensional work, form is kind of central to that thing. And what was kind of unusual for this was kind of initially I was kind of using the form of the body to kind of work with. And kind of the Game of Thrones had kind of asked me to kind of produce different kind of garments, kind of woven kind of garments kind of made out of raffia, but they were also kind of looking at different kind of shoulder pieces, collars, kind of hats, and different kind of elements, just the kind of different garments to kind of be worn. So I mean, kind of the big kind of challenges for me were, one, kind of starting to kind of work with processes that were kind of more off loom, thinking about macrame and twisting and braiding, and twining. But also when I was working on the loom, I started to really think about the warp and the weft in different ways, that they were actually kind of entities in themselves. And if you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see my arrow, but the kind of central piece is kind of the long kind of warp kind of running through it, but the weft has been kind of looped back through. And then when they come off the loom, you can kind of alter the kind of shaping of it by pulling the kind of weft that you've taken through to kind of mold into the shoulder, and you can kind of work back into them as well. So I started to think about the warp and weft in kind of different entities, and that they kind of, as well as kind of the combination of the two things working together, but actually they kind of had some really kind of interesting elements to kind of bring to themselves. Materials that I worked with, this was kind of really lovely and unusual, that I was given a palette to work with, and really I was working with a raffia, which is kind of a long grass, which is a really beautiful material to work with. It's really soft, malleable, and actually surprisingly warm as well, and dyes beautifully. It's kind of really kind of versatile material to work with. I was working with ropes and kind of twining, and kind of feathers, different kind of elements as well. And I was working with horsehair, which kind of has kind of its own kind of nature. It's kind of almost like a self-supporting material that's kind of got a robust kind of volume to it, which was kind of really kind of lovely when you were working with the shaping you could work back into. A lot of the tufting work that I did was with goat's hair. Definitely the most pungent material I've ever worked with in my life. I mean, I've moved since I've made this work, and sometimes even now I can smell it. It's really, really strong, but it kind of, as aesthetically kind of fit into the character as well. So, kind of off the back of that kind of costume work, as I said, I really started to think about combining off loom and on loom, and kind of from then I started kind of thinking about a lot more kind of off loom kind of processes, which as a weaver can be quite liberating as well, that you can kind of go off and kind of work in different environments. And twist was kind of came off the back of this, where I not only wanted to think about the warp in a different way, I wanted to kind of integrate it into kind of the final piece, and kind of keep working with the structure after it's had I'd woven it as well. So I mean, I kind of always kind of really start kind of looking for interesting shapes, interesting forms that I think are weavable. And a friend of mine gave me this little purse, this little coin purse, and it kind of twists open and shut. And kind of initially kind of looking at it closed, I thought, no, I can't weave that. But if you open it and flatten it, you can weave it. And I kind of think that, to understand anything three-dimensional, you have to look at it in kind of lots of different angles, lots of different perspectives. And that's kind of all about kind of understanding the just kind of the full kind of spectrum, kind of sphere of the object itself. So I started kind of thinking about that. as well, another reason I wanted to include this is because I wove the piece, and this is kind of the piece here that you can see the open kind of piece kind of stands up, and kind of then it twists shut and it kind of lies flat. Another thing that I kind of really kind of valued about this was it was woven on an 8-shaft hand loom, and kind of the work kind of after this really is going to become quite shaft and technologically hungry, and I just kind of love the kind of simplicity of this, and that actually you can do a lot, and technically you could weave this on a 4-shaft loom. You know, it's a kind of really kind of basic, kind of simple kind of tube structure, but that kind of twisting notion, the kind of movement within it, is kind of a big kind of recurring theme in my work. So moving on to bump, and I think this kind of structure probably took the most kind of thinking and working out. And as I kind of said at the beginning, sometimes you know, I kind of start kind of working on different structures with an end in mind, and sometimes I don't. And bump was definitely an example of I didn't have any any kind of preconception of what I wanted this to be. It was really more I just kind of wanted to explore the structure. I'd never worked with stretched yarns before, so I thought I would wreck my head with that, and kind of work with kind of different elements. So, you know, I think that I think structurally kind of there's kind of lots of kind of versatility with them. You know, they are actually kind of self-supporting. They can kind of sit in their kind of own structure. And I must admit, I do like the notion for some reason of my textiles standing on their own selvages. It just kind of appeals to me within that. So I mean, the kind of the starting point for this was kind of very simple. I was just really looking at undulating forms, and I just kind of really started to wanted to kind of create something that had that kind of more kind of dimension to it, and again kind of thinking about the logistics of the loom, that the cloth has to become kind of flat, kind of going around the beam, different elements like that. I kind of had to start to kind of think about a structure that was kind of 3D but also 2D, and kind of work within those kind of two kind of parameters within that. So I use fabric manipulation a lot and kind of working out different structures, and this kind of first kind of series of samples or sketches, whatever you want to call them, I kind of see them as my sketches more than anything else. I started working with stretch fabrics, and I mean, they're kind of more kind of knitted structures, just because it's easier to get jersey fabrics than kind of stretch woven fabrics. But then I kind of started to think about ways that I could kind of create these kind of almost kind of tensile structures, playing with tension, and kind of working with the stretch, but also thinking about different ways I can hold the structure, kind of make it more robust and more kind of voluminous within this. So, you know, I kind of almost kind of look at this and think it's more kind of taking the architecture of a tent than a textile, but it's kind of starting to kind of understand the kind of relationship between different kind of tensions and two kind of materials kind of working off each other and kind of playing in that way. So I started kind of testing out a single cell, and then started kind of getting into multiples. So initially I was starting to kind of think about kind of having horizontal and vertical pockets within a woven fabric, because obviously I'm kind of looking at these and thinking, like, how would I weave that? How would I weave that? What would I kind of have to do with that? So once I've kind of established kind of a couple of kind of key tests, thinking about the contrast between something that stretches and something that doesn't stretch, I then started to kind of sketch out, and I kind of normally kind of start on paper, just kind of thinking about different structures that you can kind of work with. And initially, because I was looking at a structure that needed horizontal and vertical pockets that you can kind of see the cross kind of formation that's kind of working here. Then I kind of was starting to kind of look at a double cloth, which is always my go-to kind of favorite. But kind of especially with this, I kind of thought that would kind of work out well. And then I was kind of going to have sections, kind of smaller sections to kind of hold the vertical strip, and kind of longer sections to kind of hold the horizontal kind of strip within that. So then I kind of came to the first testing, and I've kind of put all the kind of iterations of the kind of testing that I kind of put in, because I think that's really kind of important to kind of show within kind of experimental work, is just the amount of testing that you kind of have to do. And that actually, if you kind of, if I look at this series of kind of the first kind of samples that I kind of produced, they're not the best. They're quite aesthetically confusing. There's kind of no clarity to them. And also, even though I didn't really see them as necessarily textiles in kind of the traditional format of, kind of taking about something that you would wear or something that was kind of in an interior, tactility did still come into it. It's still important to me. I do kind of kind of want to create something that has that kind of tactility to it, and effectively I think you can these kind of look how they feel. It's like a claw, really. It's quite an abrasive structure, and that kind of didn't really kind of work too well. But I was still determined that there was an idea in there, and bits were kind of starting to kind of work. So I was thinking about the resist that I was using, the kind of the kind of strut is just kind of normal kind of boning that you would use in garment construction. And I started to really kind of think about that and kind of look at other materials that were maybe a bit more sympathetic, and that kind of weren't as harsh, because I was actually finding that you didn't need a lot of resist for it to hold the dome shape. So it didn't have to be super strong. It just had to be something that wasn't going to shrink in that way. So, and then kind of came the second test walk that I did. Oh yeah, and just to kind of mention the first set of sampling, and this was kind of woven on a George Wood Dobby looms, kind of peg and lag, so just kind of working with that kind of equipment is just interesting to know. So here I was just really kind of testing out the length of the pockets, and I was just really sticking to the vertical pockets rather than kind of bringing in the horizontal pockets. Because as soon as I started weaving, I just went, oh, if I want to have the kind of cross structure, I'm going to have to start putting lycra in my weft. And I was like, I don't know if I'm up for that just yet. It was just maybe kind of too many things to kind of think about. So I was just kind of really sticking to the kind of vertical kind of pockets within that point. The next swap, I overcomplicated everything, and it was a double cloth, and instead of using the plastic, I kind of, when I started kind of working with the boning, I kind of realized that if you kind of strip off the outer kind of cord, that there's actually it's kind of made up, it just really kind of looks like fishing wire. So I kind of started thinking, well, instead of having pockets, what if I had strips of a yarn that was kind of a bit more robust and resilient in that way. And again, I was kind of sticking with the double cloth, and really kind of aesthetically, that there was elements of it that I liked, but really aesthetically it was just kind of very confusing and massively overcomplicated. And I just thought, you just kind of, it's not kind of really, it makes no sense. It makes no sense to me to kind of look at it. But there's definitely elements starting to come through. I was kind of starting to notice the pleating was really starting to kind of take shape and kind of work with that. So once I kind of had a couple of bodies, you know, kind of test warps to kind of work on, you know, I always kind of think to kind of, my process seems to be that I kind of start quite quickly. I'm definitely process driven, and you know, it just kind of takes just kind of one kind of simple idea of just really kind of thinking about undulating forms and the relationship kind of between 2D and 3D. That's kind of started, you know, really kind of that I could actually start generating samples quite quickly. But then there kind of has to be kind of a point of reflection and kind of looking back over it and really evaluating what's worked and what hasn't worked. And that's where I kind of started to really kind of focus more on the pleating side. And I thought, well, there's something definitely in that. And I wanted to kind of pursue that. And also, you know, I kind of do a lot of writing and sketching about the samples, kind of picking out the key bits. And I actually kind of the research I kind of do at this point is kind of a lot more kind of pointed and focused on that. So, you know, I get going quickly, and then I probably stop and kind of think about kind of what's going on. Then I kind of started to think about the kind of structure of the pleats and the different ways you can pleat, and to kind of really kind of create the kind of volume. So I kind of went back to paper folding and just really kind of thinking about that. I think this is probably a comment kind of true of any kind of creative practice, but for me, I find it really important to have different paces of work when you're kind of experimenting, because I think especially when you're testing and that kind of that iterative process of doing something, changing it slightly and doing something kind of different, that I find it really important to have things that are quicker pace and slower pace, just to kind of keep that energy up, and kind of keep you kind of engaged in it. Because I think if you don't, then you can put an idea down far too quickly and not kind of really kind of realize it in that way. So that's where the fabric manipulation and the paper folding, things like that, become something a lot more instant, something I can kind of interact with kind of on a more kind of immediate kind of play. So once I'd kind of evaluated what was working and decided that the overall double cloth was almost kind of unnecessary, it was too complicated, and it was kind of too visually confusing. So what I opted for was to create channels of a double cloth structure, and was basically kind of with a ground cloth kind of running with it. And I kind of stuck with the plastic, the kind of the fine plastic rather than the boning, and it just kind of basically kind of worked out a structure where I could weave kind of alternating pattern pockets for me to kind of insert the plastic into. Now obviously that kind of affects your set, because you know, I've basically got a double cloth in one section and a single cloth sitting next to it. And I just kind of resolved that by upping the set of those kind of spines to kind of work with. And that also kind of meant that I could actually start using the material to help with the dome, the creating the undulation, because I purely ran in the pocket sections the lycra underneath, and the kind of more stable fiber of the kind of silk running on the top. And it just kind of meant that it kind of actually just kind of naturally started to pull itself in, and create kind of the bump kind of structure within that. I put this in because I wanted that's the lycra that I was working with, is super fine kind of lycra that was kind of work, and I used that to kind of form the pleats, and I just used that as floats kind of running throughout the whole cloth, and it's amazing stuff. I mean, it's super stretchy. Unfortunately don't have a picture of when I took it off the warping frame, which is a real shame. But if you got a really fine yarn and balled it all up in a complete mess, that's what the warp looked like. It was just crazy. And it was, I mean, that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever kind of made a warp out of, just out of, I was actually trying to take the tension out of it and lay it on the warp rather than actually, because if you stretched it, I would have been stretched to the other end of the studio. So just kind of super stretchy and super fine, but just kind of brilliant at kind of doing what I wanted it to do. And then, so warp number 4, and that kind of basically started giving me something more successful, and that kind of created the bump series. So the kind of, you can see the arrows kind of showing the direction of the warp, and off that warp I was managed to get about 5 samples off, but there's a lot of fabric in them. I'll come back to that. And they were woven on a 24 shaft computerized Dobby loom. I wove 2 samples that you can see here on the left, and then wasn't happy with the proportions of the bumps, so I chucked out some sections to just basically kind of minimize the fabric in between the bumps. And I think aesthetically that looks better on flat, but actually these ones kind of sit better on a form, so, you know, so that's kind of nice to kind of have those kind of 2 things kind of think about. And and then throughout this kind of series, I was really just kind of thinking about the different types of pleats that I could achieve through the structures, the positioning of the floats, and how I could work with that. I mean, I must admit, I kind of, when I'm working more kind of 3-dimensional, I don't really think about color until maybe well into the project. And definitely with these, again, it was more about the form. And that's kind of initially why I kind of stick to, you know, kind of no color really within the color palette. But here, the color that I was using was just specifically to kind of accentuate the structure. It was basically to kind of acknowledge or point out a change in the structure or highlight a kind of key point within the pleats, different things like that. So it was more about accentuating the structure than necessarily an aesthetic kind of choice within that. I was kind of playing around with just kind of creating pleats without kind of any resist in them. I was also kind of thinking about kind of having sections without any lycra in them, and you still kind of get quite a nice kind of dome shape, but not kind of as much as when the lycra is kind of running throughout, right, much closer to the plastic itself. So and then these were kind of really the main kind of more successful samples that I kind of produced. So as I said, there's they kind of within the image, you can start to see the pockets that kind of wove into them to insert the plastic into. And there's kind of so much fabric within these samples, so you can kind of see here that basically that 8-inch sample stretches out to 36 inches. But what I do love about them is the quality of them. That they're really spongy, you know, and you could imagine that they would be kind of quite comforting in that way. So the cross section below just kind of shows you where the lycra is floating on the back. So that was kind of the first pleat. It was kind of the most kind of simple pleat that was kind of playing with. The next one is blue sample, and this one was kind of really kind of focusing more on creating a very pointed pleat. Again, and here I was just kind of using the blue thread to really highlight the sharpest point of it, and the black, the kind of the deepest kind of part of the valley as well within that. Again, there's a lot of fabric hidden in there. Not as much as the other one, but you can see there. And I kind of created the kind of extra points by having long floats kind of running, but also kind of shorter floats, just kind of nipping where the blue weft was going in to really kind of throw it out and make it kind of stand out a lot more. Box pleat. This was my most favorite pleat to think about, completely wrecked my head. But it was a good brain teaser. And also I think this one you can see kind of the hidden elements. The color just really kind of opens up the kind of structure within that. You can quite clearly see the pockets that are being woven, so yeah, it takes quite a lot of pull to get them to kind of pop out. And again, for me, that was kind of my most favorite part of those samples, was the releasing them off tension and just kind of watching them kind of expand and contract. It was kind of really kind of exciting to see that. And here, yeah, this was just kind of really kind of fun, kind of thinking about the sequencing of the floats, having kind of floats on the top and on the bottom, kind of working in unison to pull sections in to create a pleat on top, but pull it on the underneath to kind of draw it in to kind of create the box pleat kind of structure itself. So that was kind of the most the most fun one to kind of think about and kind of explore in that way. And again, that took a lot of kind of playing around with just folding up pieces of paper and kind of A, B's and C's and kind of, oh right, these two join, and kind of the unexpected kind of nature with that. I kind of have to kind of really kind of work in a three-dimensional way to kind of plan out the different patterns that you would need, that you're kind of changing the sequence kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 times to kind of build up just kind of that simple kind of pleat that's kind of working with there. Oh, sorry, did I stretch that one out? And then kind of just another kind of colorway of the box pleats. And then this one was kind of playing around with opacity as well. There's kind of woven sections of kind of much finer yarn to kind of just kind of get that contrast. Contrast is a big theme of my work. And I kind of think that's kind of another way of keeping kind of the momentum going with experimentation, that you can kind of think yourself into a corner, and then you kind of go, right, okay, what's the complete opposite? And you can kind of, it can just suddenly kind of throw up a different idea or a different kind of starting point within that. So that's kind of something, a kind of little thing that I kind of come back to kind of time and time again. This was kind of a variation of bump, kind of woven on a jacquard power loom, and I think that they're more kind of successful, if that's the right word, as a fabric. They kind of feel more like a fabric should. And I think there's kind of potential in there. I just kind of run out of time, really. But what I was kind of starting to think about was, because of the kind of limitation of having 24 shafts, I was working with kind of I was working with rectangular pockets. So I was starting to try and think about creating different shapes of pockets within that to kind of play around with that. But also kind of the added challenge here is, because you're kind of working on a warp that's already kind of set up, I kind of had to kind of rethink how I was going at the placement of the stretch yarn and kind of work with it in that way. So it was kind of a kind of similar kind of development, but it was kind of shifting your perspective again and coming at something from a completely different kind of perspective within that. So yes, I mean, once I've kind of established the structure, that's when I kind of start to like to draw it and think about it, and kind of maybe kind of think about the redesigning of it. And definitely jacquard was kind of something that I kind of thought, actually I could really start to play around with scale, and kind of play around with different scales of the cells that could kind of interlock with each other and kind of work with it in that way. And then this was warp number 5, and this is when I was really trying to start to kind of remove the different elements out of it. So this is bump, but it's plastic free. And it was just kind of purely kind of creating, using the materials I was working with to contrast areas that were stretch and areas that would be kind of more kind of robust and kind of full within that. It's not as robust as kind of the original kind of bump series. It's a lot more kind of fragile and kind of lightweight, but it does kind of still kind of hold the form really lovely and kind of work with that. So again, there's kind of a lot of fabric in there to kind of work with. And I do love kind of working with a pinstripe within kind of more kind of 3D work. I think it just accentuates the form a lot, and just kind of really kind of shows the distortion of the fabric within that as well. So you can kind of see obviously the kind of looping of the kind of more kind of robust yarn at the back, where I've not wanted it to kind of hold out the fabric with. Just another detail of them. So pop out was really kind of came from kind of the earlier theme that I mentioned of kind of this twisting notion and a diagonal, and wanting to kind of create a diagonal within that. And I started to kind of think about different ways that I could start to create this within kind of a woven fabric. And I initially started with thinking about kind of fabric manipulation and looking at pleating and smocking. And I was kind of working away with this, and I was going, well, I can't weave that. And then it snapped shut. And I went, well, I can weave that. And it suddenly kind of gave me the idea of kind of working with kind of weaving something where you have to kind of unfold it afterwards, and then you kind of got that relationship with it. So that's where the kind of main idea of pop out came from. And you can see on the right hand side, that's actually how it's woven. And it's got a kind of spine, an interchanging spine running on the left hand side, and that's kind of where different kind of layers, different ribbons that you want to call kind of interchange to kind of create this pop out structure within that. And what was kind of complicated about this, well, there was a few things. Well, one, you can't see your edges. And as a weaver, that's not good news. You're always kind of thinking about your edges and the quality of your edges. But also I had to think about the wefting sequence within that, because I actually needed the weft to be in a certain position when I moved to a different layer. So kind of initially, the start of the sample, you'll go kind of from 3 layers, where you've got the top layer and the bottom layer, but you've got kind of the central spine starting to kind of form there. And then effectively that's going to split into 2, that layer. Oh, my arrow is just, there it is, within it. So kind of the first thing is kind of a kind of 3 layer interchanging lattice. So kind of your wefting sequence has to start at the blue arrow. And you kind of almost got kind of 2 picks per layer before you can kind of move on to the next one, and the kind of the same one with the 4 layer. So here you can kind of see that you'll have 2 picks before you kind of move on to the next layer, and that kind of kept my weft in the position that I needed it to be within that. And so kind of started with 3 layers, it kind of branches into 4 layers, and then those 4 layers start to interchange. And it's this kind of the kind of 2 middle ones, layers 2 and 3, that actually completely interchange, but they sometimes stitch into layers 1 and 4 to kind of create that kind of pop out structure that came from the kind of central part. And pop out was one of the rare times I put on one warp and I actually got something I wanted out of it, which is quite rare. So I generally find that I put a warp on and kind of weave what I've intended, but actually not so keen on that, but get about 5 other ideas that I can kind of work with and kind of build on it that way. So pop out was quite rare in that actually it worked quite successfully the first time, and then it's just kind of starting to kind of play around with different proportions of patterns to kind of think with. and again, you can just kind of see kind of the kind of unfolding of the structure kind of happening there. And it was when I started to apply the kind of basic structure of pop out to weaving on jacquard loom that instead of just having a central spine, it kind of extended right across the cloth to kind of create these kind of more kind of voluminous kind of structures to kind of play around with. And I mean, it's as soon as you kind of take a structure and you apply it to a different technology or a different way of kind of producing it, I always find it quite interesting, just kind of the psychological aspect of kind of the different realms that it kind of opens up to you. For me, yes, there was challenges kind of working on the jacquard, but because there's this kind of speed of weaving and the scale of weaving, I actually started to kind of think for the first time, you know, I was really excited about cutting into these forms, which on a hand woven fabrics, you sometimes it's like, no, don't you come anywhere near it with some scissors, get very kind of upset. So it kind of just changed my approach and my attitude towards the fabric, that I was kind of a lot more kind of playful with it when it came off the loom, and started to thinking about kind of cutting and stretching and kind of the kind of play of the colors and the sequence and the pattern within the different layers within that. So it was quite liberating from that point of view, that I actually was quite happy to get tore into the samples with a set of scissors, and, you know, kind of thinking about kind of the revealing of different shapes and different patterns by kind of cutting into sections, folding them back, revealing different colors from things like this. And from there, I started kind of working on a series of fabric manipulation samples, because I was really interested in the idea of hidden shapes and playing around with geometrics and patterning and layering. I mean, these are kind of manipulation samples, kind of fabric manipulation samples, kind of created from cotton organdy. Really beautiful fabric to work with. It kind of holds its shape really well, really kind of crisp. And I kind of started to kind of play around with colors and tone, just to kind of accentuate the form within it as well. You know, so that's where I kind of started to really kind of think about what these kind of fabrics could be, kind of play around with the composition. The scale of things as well was kind of really exciting, and that was something that I kind of wanted to pursue in that way. So as well as kind of working kind of on the jacquard loom, I started to develop the kind of lattice structure on computerized Adobe Loom as well, kind of hand weaving it. And the reason for this was that there was an opportunity to kind of weave on a much bigger scale on a power loom. So I started kind of developing these just to kind of really get the structure and the sets and all those kind of different elements sorted, just kind of building up to that. I was kind of working with polyester as well, because I wanted to think about kind of laser cutting the different shapes into it. So this was all kind of testing within that. And again, just kind of playing around with the interchanging of the different layers, the expanding and contracting. And I kind of really kind of love the notion that it could just kind of fold completely flat and expand into something kind of much bigger within that. So I was playing around with the cells, the shape of the cells, elongating them, kind of, you know, regular, irregular, kind of playing around with the format. Unfortunately, this was where you know, kind of went to set up a warp on power loom. I mean, you're talking about coming close to about 7,000 ends. It was meant to be big, it was going to be voluminous, it was going to fill an interior, and it was really all about playing with acoustics, so kind of within the interiors, and kind of work within that. Unfortunately, that didn't work. We just couldn't get it to weave. I don't know if the loom was running too fast, or if it was the yarn or anything like that. It kind of the big scale piece didn't work. And I've kind of left this in here because I do think it's really important that, you know, it was a lot of work and it was kind of that big ambition, but you know, it didn't work, but I would rather try, and I think that's really important. And I suppose with it kind of experimental work, there is a high risk factor, and you know, it's not always going to work out, but you know, the kind of the beauty of it is just, you know, kind of figuring it out. And I do think that this would with more time, this would have worked. So I haven't given up on it yet, but I just was kind of blown away by the potential of the scale, and you know, the kind of the effects it could have on an interior to kind of work with. Anyway, so sorry, I think I'm kind of running. I'll speed up. So even though the kind of the larger scale kind of piece didn't work for kind of the development of lattice, it did find a home in the Maelstrom, and this was a piece that was commissioned by DEGW, which is an architectural firm, and they were kind of creating a study that was kind of really exploring innovation, decision making, kind of all kind of just kind of the creative elements. And they wanted to kind of pick different case studies. At this point, I was at the Anne Sutton Foundation, and Anne Sutton had a retrospective exhibition on, and Andrew Harrison, who kind of wrote this brief, he contacted Anne saying, I went to your exhibition, loved your work, can you weave a maelstrom? And she was like, no, but I know a woman who can. And that was me. So she kind of passed it on to me. So and that's where, just to kind of go back to this, Andrew kind of put together this brief, and it was kind of the most substantial brief that I'd ever kind of come across or kind of worked with. And part of it was that they kind of wanted to kind of do kind of case studies into innovation, but there was different kind of elements that I had to work into the project, that they had to have some kind of relationship with Shetland, and that they kind of wanted the kind of mathematics to go in nature, the Fibonacci series. They wanted some kind of link within that, and they also had kind of highlighted Edgar Allan Poe's Descent into the Maelstrom. So there was quite a few different elements that I had to kind of think about to kind of put into this. The piece also had to go, was to plan to go into a traveling exhibition, so it had to be transportable, it had to be easy to install. So there was lots of different logistic things that I kind of had to think about, and also the time scale was quite tight. So between it all. So kind of initially, I kind of really got into playing around with the Fibonacci spiral, kind of thinking about the kind of potential of that. And also because I wanted to create a piece of work that needed to be very transportable, I started to kind of really think about lattice, kind of applying the structure of lattice into this, because I kind of felt that, well, actually this can fold completely flat. It can be, you know, kind of a much bigger piece, kind of reduced down into a much smaller scale. So I kind of thought it kind of hit all the kind of key elements that they wanted within the brief. So here I'm just kind of playing around with the shape that I'm going to kind of work into, and then kind of visualize it within a kind of model to kind of start thinking about scale. I also had to start thinking about creating a structure that was more self-supporting, even though lattice was stood up by itself, it was still quite fragile. So this had to be a lot more kind of resilient. There was also kind of the link between, they had included that they really wanted something woven in Shetland yarn, because there's kind of still kind of producing yarns up in Shetland. So and it was a soft lamb's wool, which wasn't ideal initially, but when I kind of started to work with it, actually I realized there was kind of lots of kind of properties of the wool that I hadn't really kind of thought about, that that I was kind of intending the piece to be woven in 3 segments, but I wanted it to be cut afterwards and shaped. And that actually the wool was very good at holding that shape because of the fibrous quality of it, which is something I hadn't considered. So sometimes you can be thrown a curveball that you can initially go, that's not right, but actually it's got properties that maybe you haven't considered or kind of thought about within that. So I started kind of planning the sequencing of the different segments, of the different layers. So there was 3 different segments, but there was 4 different layers of each segment. And that's just kind of the sequencing of all the different colors kind of moving kind of from one layer right down to the bottom, kind of back up to the top again. And also the cells kind of increase in size from the center. They kind of get bigger towards the kind of tail end. So this is the piece in loom state before it's been treated or cut into. And then I had to kind of think of ways to kind of treat the fabric, just to kind of hold that kind of crisp edge just a bit more, and also kind of give it just kind of a bit more kind of resilience. The wool, yes, it was kind of great at kind of holding the cut edge, but because it's quite a floppy yarn, in the weft I used a copper, it was kind of a silk spun copper core yarn. It was really beautiful yarn to kind of work with. And that just kind of seemed to give the structure the strength that it needed to be kind of just a bit more kind of resilient in that way. So it's very high-tech pleating happening, just very kind of ironing away. And then the trauma of cutting into it. So it's like, please, this has to go right. And that was something that I must admit, it went exceptionally well. I was a bit concerned because cutting multiple layers of fabric isn't always easy. You know, you kind of prefer to just kind of cut one layer at a time. But anyway, it actually kind of worked out very well. So it, you know, kind of gave me kind of the edge that I wanted to get. And that's the 3 segments separately. And then you can just kind of see that it goes from being a single layer to 2 layers to the 4 layers, just kind of opening up. And then the cells kind of accrete as they kind of progress throughout the segment. The base was also kind of something that was quite important because this was the guide really for kind of putting the segments into the composition that I'd kind of planned. So it's just a little kind of video here of that being set up. So they were all kind of color coded. There was a blue segment, there was kind of a green segment, and there was a blue and green segment. So they kind of worked within that. And the idea for the central kind of curling part was, pardon me, was actually from a measuring tape, just to kind of bring the 3 segments together to kind of loop them into that to kind of create kind of the formation at the end. And that's the piece actually in Shetland itself. So, and I quite like it kind of completely kind of breaking away from the intended structure within that. So those are kind of, that's me kind of taking you into a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some kind of key structures and developments. I have included some recommended books. Love these, they're great. They're brilliant. And yes, so yeah, hopefully that's okay, sorry, that's me.
That was lovely, Lucy. Thank you so much. It was really exciting to see all the samples, I have to say. It's really fun to see it on the website, but it was like everything I wanted, all the questions I had have been answered.
Brilliant. No, sorry, I just kind of suddenly stopped. I just kind of went, oh, I'm kind of massively running over time.
All right. It was a good use of time, I think, still. Stephen, do you want to help us moderate a Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely. We have just a minute here today because we are a little bit over time, but it's totally worth it. I hope you all will stick around. Lucy, thank you so much. I will say just really briefly, like, you're just such a master of this, and I'm just so blown away. Thank you so much for your process. I felt with that last design, this the way you present, I felt like a sense of anticipation, like, can she pull it off? Like I was imagining the reality show commentator, like, Lucy has been
I
challenged.
know. I know I shouldn't have been smiling on that slide because it went horribly wrong. But you know, all came good in the end. I do think that's just a big part of experimentation, that you've got to hold your nerve and keep that kind of resilience and kind of keep coming back. And you just go, just because it didn't work that one time doesn't mean it was a bad idea or it shouldn't. It's just, you know, so it is kind of important.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely inspiring. I mean, the way that you just step forward into these designs and these sculptures. I mean, it's I feel like a little more open after watching you work today, actually, pretty honestly. It's amazing. We have one quick question in here, and I'm going to just pull it back up here. I'm actually, Maya, do you want to just present your question? You want to turn on your camera and give your question really quick, Maya? Or if not, you can just message me. Oh, there you are. Thanks, Maya. Will you just say your question?
Hello. Hi, Lucy. Lucy actually taught me at university, although I didn't do weave, I did knit instead. I wanted to ask you about twist. So
Yeah.
that cube structure, is it attached to the circular frame? Is that separately, or is that all as?
So what I've done there is there's a central woven piece, and then I have taken the warp and I've attached it to 2 rings.
Okay.
So it is part of the structure.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but it's the warp from the cube.
Yeah,
okay.
So because the only difference with the central kind of twisting part, that's got weft working into it. Whereas the rest, it's just the exposed warp within it.
Okay.
So, you know, yeah.
Yeah, okay, no, beautiful. It was lovely seeing all of your work. I'm so inspired.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you so much.
I didn't pay Maya to go. But thank you, Maya.
Thank you.
Lucy, I have a back-end question for you that is less about weaving and more about professional practice. So you work with, it seems like you're working with HBO films. You're working with artists who are sort of commissioning you in this place. Yeah. And I mean, your work is just so stunning. I was trying to what will I commission Lucy to do? I was like, amazing. my kind of professional practice question for you is how do you, these are so time intensive, you know, it seems like you're working with your students, you're also working, how do you decide, this is my question for me too, how do you decide what projects to take on and how much time you're going to give to these pieces? It's so impressive, and I'm how do you make that decision?
Well, I mean, I think it comes down to how much time I have, really. And unfortunately, there's things where I would say probably, you know, the past 5 years I've more focused on teaching, and I love teaching and it's brilliant, but it doesn't leave. It's more the energy. It's more the energy than the time. And there's definitely things where I've had to turn down, and it's been a bit heartbreaking, to be honest with you. So that's kind of really tough. But I think I kind of hoping that you just kind of work in cycles, and there's times where you know, I've kind of gone, right, I've got an opportunity to do my own work. You just kind of get really kind of focused on that. And then, you know, kind of more kind of intense in kind of the teaching side. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it definitely purely comes down to kind of the being realistic. And I think sometimes I've kind of beaten myself up about it because I've just gone, I can't take that on, but I really want to do it. But I just know that I just won't be able to do it. So
what you are doing is insane. I can't even imagine. It's just so great. We are a little bit over time, so I just want to be conscious of that. If anybody else wants to follow up, somebody did have a question about the books, Lucy. What I'll do is that when I post this on YouTube, I'll just go back and I'll make a link to those books.
Amazing.
Just for people that are asking. And just so everybody knows, this will be posted to YouTube eventually. Laura, I'm going to hand this over to you and your class if they have questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think there's urgent questions here. I was gonna maybe wrap things up with our final slides, just to maybe give one last huge round of applause and thank you to Lucy for sharing your afternoon with us and sharing your practice and being so open. We really appreciate it. And I don't know why, but I wrote down goat hair because I want to smell it. I know I'm not going to like it, but you know, we have an installation coming up and I was like, maybe we should like put goat hair in the space so it feels farmy.
Well, I must admit, I did speak to a farmer about it. You need to make sure it's buck goats, because that seems to be particularly
Wow, or sticky cheese or something.
There you go.
Yeah. Before we go today, I just want to plug our next and actually final talk in this talk series for the fall, which will be Lars Shimabukuro, who will be speaking on November 29th. So I hope we'll all see a bunch of folks back for that talk. And thank you so much again, Lucy. This has been just so lovely. So,
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
No worries. Easy peasy.
Thanks a lot.
Such a pleasure, Lucy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to say goodbye and thanks to everyone.